We're talking here with Docere Pharmakis. It may or may not be his real name, but it's a name he uses.
Absolutely.
About some organizing that's going to be occurring in Moscow and the surrounding area of a very old tradition dating back to the civil rights movement of the mid-'60s. So tell us.
Absolutely. So I'm Docere Pharmakis, and I'm the Minister of Information for the Panther Party of Washington. And we're coming off of a name change. We were previously the White Panther Party of Washington. We've been working closely with the Black Panther Party of Washington. It's mostly been organizing out west, and now we're trying to expand our operation over into this area, and Moscow, Pullman area, please. One of the big things we've been working on, should I?
Please.
Absolutely.
Elucidate here. Enlighten us.
Absolutely. So, we're a relatively new, obviously the Black Panthers have been around for a while, but our specific chapter, our specific organization is pretty new. And we've been working in response to, over in the Tacoma, Lakewood area around Seattle, there's been quite a few police killings that have been happening of Black and Indigenous people. The ones that, a couple of the ones we have been really highlighted. Manny Ellis, who was killed by Tacoma police. It was only a few weeks before the George Floyd killing, and it was in much the same way. That was multiple officers, kneeling on a helpless suspect who's saying, I can't breathe," until they die. And then another one that we've been working on recently, we've been trying to get the word out. We've been making a stink at Lakewood City Council meetings, and has been the murder of Saeed Joaquin, who was shot in his car by a couple of officers. He had his hands up, and they shot him. They said there was a gun in the car. Having a gun in your car isn't a reason to shoot someone, right? We saw that with Philando Castile. We saw that, it comes back to that, and a lot of the same people that will stand up for the police in these situations, will talk about the Second Amendment. The truth is, if you can be killed with impunity for being armed, you don't have a Second Amendment right.
This is true.
We talk about these things, and I think that especially in an area like this, like the Palouse, it's easy to feel detached from the things that are happening in other places. This isn't a population center. We don't see a huge amount of this sort of racialized violence. There might be bits here and there, but the truth is, it's just for the most part, a very monochromatic community. It's very, not a great deal of diversity. And again, it's a small area, but even in a place like this, when we can go over to Pullman and we can look, we can see, people might remember the name Sergeant Hargraves a couple of years ago, the Pullman police sergeant who sexually assaulted a woman who was intoxicated while on duty. And I believe that resulted in a hung jury, and he was let go, but he never did jail time. There was a hung jury, and the victim said, according to a statement from their lawyer, they said that they didn't want to suffer the indignity of yet another trial, because they just realized that they weren't going to get any justice, and all this was doing was just re-traumatizing this person. And then we can also think about what happened to Kyle North. Kyle North was a man in Pullman who was having they were having a mental health incident, and the police showed up. He didn't attack anyone. He didn't resist arrest. But officers Sungarath and Anderson, and I might not have pronounced the first guy's name correctly, but they assaulted him. They broke his arm. They dislocated his shoulder. Or they choked him out. They tased him. Even here, it's happening, and it's not just, because again, I understand this is an area where, I'm not saying there isn't diversity, but there isn't a terribly great amount. So, those of us listening, those of us that are white listening, I hear that argument, people that want to bash on the Panthers, bash on the Black Lives Matter movement all the time. They'll say, oh, well, but you guys don't care when it happens to white people. Well, we do. I'm talking about white people that are getting assaulted by the cops, too. It can happen to all of us, and it is happening.
It seems that the component that you see in all this, why do the authorities respond with lethal violence? It is because it is out of fear.
Absolutely.
And they're operating from a place of fear. If you are somebody that they would fear, there's a lot of prejudice against people that have mental issues. And so there's this there's a fear factor. The same way back in many years past, and still occurring with some people, you see a face of a different hue, and all of a sudden there's some kind of fear.
Oh, absolutely.
And on the part of the folks of darker hue, that fear is justified when they see a white person in a uniform.
Oh,
and this
absolutely.
has been borne out by the statistics that they don't choose to keep. They don't choose to keep these statistics, but as this whole Black Lives Matter has come out, one of my visitors here for a while actually met George Floyd in Minneapolis, and George was a kind person who he was talking to my friend who was white because he was backpacking, and George just asked him, "Well, are you okay? Is there anything you need?" He looked out for homeless folks. The government looks out for them. Let's get the bulldozers out and sweep their camp, etc. So
absolutely.
and this is happening to people of all colors.
Oh, absolutely.
So it really comes down in that case probably to we don't want to be confronted with the reality that there are people that are unsheltered, and we would blame them. We got to solve the homeless problem. That's just code for get them out of sight.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
or better yet, get them in jail
anyway,
where we can make money off
yeah,
of them.
so I interrupted you with that side thought.
No,
go ahead.
That was interesting. I didn't know that about George Floyd. I didn't know about his work with the homeless, so that was definitely interesting.
And he wasn't being paid to do that either. That's just who he was.
No, absolutely. And again, they won't tell you that. There's always the character assassination that happens. Again, with Manny Ellis, that case, much like with the George Floyd case, there was the thing that always comes up where they said, well, part of why he died in the situation was drugs. He was on drugs. There were drugs in the system at the time of the murder. That they always brought that one out. Even if they find marijuana in someone's apartment, that comes up after they've been
If
killed.
they were to do blood tests on the police that killed him, they'd probably find drugs there too.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean,
So,
or they could go to Wall Street and start stopping frisking people and see if they find any cocaine.
well, one of my other friends did prison time for some dust in a baggie, and she knows full well that the people that put her there, they're doing all of those drugs, but they're just rich and they don't get caught because they're the ones doing the catching. And so what you have to look at here, the mechanism.
Oh, absolutely.
The mechanisms and the results of the mechanism speak to what the intent of that mechanism of the drug war was. And if you go back to some of the Nixon tapes, where all of a sudden it's revealed, oh, this is how we can mess with the black folks.
Oh, absolutely.
And the brown folks and the red folks. And then you add to that the Oliver North and the drug trade fueling, getting aid to the Nicaraguan Contras after Congress said, no, you're not going to do this. The government is putting out on the street.
Oh, absolutely. And it's...
There's money there's extra money in doing drug war stuff, see.
Oh, absolutely.
Just like when they put in the seatbelt law here that you get a ticket, the feds were paying extra money. You get overtime, double time if you were doing that enforcement. So when that came in, I got pulled over 3 times with my seatbelt on.
That's just incredible, and it shows us something where you do see an officer that's willing to, a person that's willing to, like, I'm gonna, just for some extra money, I'm gonna keep pulling over whoever I can. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna inconvenience whoever I can. I'm going to just for that extra, just so that my bosses throw me a bone. It's.
Well, I mean that's a low level of corruption.
Absolutely.
You're operating for not doing the job you're hired to do, serving the public, you're operating out of your own self-interest and hurting the public in the process. So
It's absolutely.
anyway, I was just a disgruntled motorist. Yeah.
No, it's incredible the level to which, I mean, obviously, again, this whole system is built around, it's built around money, it's built around protecting the ruling class, the people who own the means of production, who own the capital. We can look at this, what you asked me about, like, to talk about, to say, why do we need a Panther Party? People, when people don't want to get involved in these things, when people want to talk about, like, I'm not too interested in politics. You hear that a lot. And I understand why people aren't interested in politics, because they have we're taught a really weird idea of what politics are, because people think that,
they think human rights is politics.
They think human rights is politics.
Yeah. Or
they think that, what being interested in politics means is, you're interested in, like, you check a box between red or blue, and, it's just some game that Republicans and Democrats play. They don't connect it to real parts of our lives. They think that it's just the electoral process, just the voting. They don't see
it. Has very much to do with what you think about and talk about, and this is how politics is developing consensus amongst the people that of what you speak the truth and you listen to others, and we learn from each other and we figure out how to do things. However, as you well know, that whole process has been perverted, let's see.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So you have to. It's a lot easier for a for-profit corporation to come up with the money to get their message across. It takes a lot of us to get up enough to get on the media and put our message across. So this is one of the reasons I'm so glad to be on Radio Free Moscow.
No, absolutely.
So.
And even the media, the media sites that were shown, like, oh, we can go try to get our message out on Facebook, I know TikTok, but, they control those too, and they control, and I've made TikToks in the past. I've seen other leftist creators that make TikToks, and what happens is, if they choose which videos to boost, and if I just make a post and I say, oh yeah, Donald Trump sucks and here's why, and I say some things that might be like some good one-liners, that'll get boosted. Mm-hmm. But if I get on there and I say, here's the issue, here's the systemic issue.
Oh, they'd let your slogan fly because it would get engagement.
Exactly.
But you don't if you try to go deeper and actually, yeah, okay.
That gets shut down. Oh yeah.
Because as long as we're flinging slogans across the great divide that has been deliberately created by the algorithms of Facebook and other things, I mean, they feed you more of the stuff that you reacted to,
Absolutely.
whether it be good or bad. So we can be led to believe any number of things. Now, when the government is working, and somebody makes a statement, and you'll see this, then they have to backtrack because all of a sudden they find out from the data on Google that this isn't going over. We better buttress this up, otherwise our credit, we'll get caught with having lied, which of course they had lied.
Oh, of course.
So yeah. we'll embellish a little bit, or we'll say, oh well, we didn't know, and they'll finally own up to it. But it took them the longest time to own up to something that the military was involved in that killed several people that I know, Agent Orange.
Oh yeah.
And they did the same thing with this Gulf War syndrome thing. So anytime you hear the politicians talk about we got to support our troops, well, put your money where your mouth is, because most of the veterans that I know, and I'm a conscientious objector, but I've got a lot of veteran friends, they don't get what they're promised.
No. No, not at all. And, I am a veteran. Okay. I served a few years in the Marine Corps. I didn't go overseas or anything like that, but there's all kinds of different people there. But what you're going to see you're going to see some people who are who I wouldn't support. You know, you're going to see the people who do, the reactionaries who join because they wanted to go fight, they want to go kill someone, But you also see a lot of people who, this was their chance at a better life. There's the poverty draft is very real.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I'm from the days of the draft lottery and the student deferments and all this stuff, and then you had to register. Well, they still have to register, but there's no actual draft. But you watch, they get something going, that'll change.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of it's this neoliberal sort of take they have on things going now, where it's not, it's the same conservative, like reactionary. They're still controlling our lives the same ways they've always done, but they have these sort of sneakier ways of doing it.
Well, you realize the reason for the all-volunteer army was now nobody's got any stake in the game, so just trust us. We're doing the right thing for our country, and with the exception of the Iraq War, the beginning of that, mostly everybody's quiet.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, well, they got killed. Well, they volunteered. They knew what they were getting into when they volunteered. Well,
absolutely.
No, they were promised college education, medical care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, well, you've heard the stories, and so have I.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's brutal. And it's the continued. I think a lot about Smedley Butler, because he was a.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was a Marine who and they told us all about him in boot camp. They told us all about how long he served and all the battles he won. They didn't tell us about the anti-war activism that he did after he got out. They didn't tell us, about the book he wrote. They didn't tell us about War as a Racket, where he said, they lied to us and they made us, they made us muscle men for Wall Street, and we died so that he said war is the only racket, is the only enterprise in which the profits are measured in dollars and the losses are measured in bodies. And I don't know. I think what people are going to see in the next few years, and this is why we need to start getting organized, because I think the last few years have been rough. They've been rough all around. I know people are, having a hard time right now for a lot of reasons. There's the pandemic. Obviously, politically, a lot has been going on. It's been a disaster. With Trumpism, with the riot, and I support a lot of, the things that happened in the Black Lives Matter movement, but at the same time, there were missed opportunities there, where if there had been a wider, broader organizational structure before all those protests happened, we could have gotten more done. We could have gotten more systemic change out of it.
Think of the Occupy movement.
Absolutely.
Same situation. Yeah. Now, the one movement that I got involved in, Standing Rock, that is still going strong. The people didn't forget about it.
Absolutely.
And it's going on in Canada. It's going on worldwide. The Water Protector movement. So that has big, strong legs, and it will continue until hopefully we don't have to live through what that movie Don't Look Up.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, and we're getting there, Yeah. You see, again, I mean, when you talk about environmental issues, I mean, even right now, and people still have this idea of, like, treating these, climate change and all of the environmental looming disasters like they're just looming, and they're happening. They're here, in Colorado right now, two towns just burned down.
Yeah.
In the middle of winter in Colorado. And these weather, all these weather phenomenons that we're seeing, they're going to keep getting worse, right? We all know that. And, they're going to keep getting worse. The political situation in this country, that's not going to get any better. Some people might think it is, but I'm telling you, it's not going to get any better. the contradictions are going to keep deepening at this point, because what's happening when you look throughout the world is that more and more other countries are done with us.
Yeah.
And what happens when that happens is, when other countries decide that they're done with the United States and with U.S. imperialism, is that forces the state apparatus that we have here to turn imperialism inward, because it isn't able to take as many resources from other people throughout the world as it has been. So now it has to exploit those of us at home harder.
Oh, okay. You notice how when they went to do all of that relief for the losses and troubles caused by the pandemic, where did all that money go?
Where did it go?
Where did it go to? Well, it went to many to corporations whose profits were reduced. Profits were reduced.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so let's see.
So you're still making money, just, when profits are reduced, right?
But now some of the companies are making record profits.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're trying to poison the idea of helping the people. Oh, that's going to cause inflation. And to prove that it's causing inflation, they're either putting things are coming in smaller packages to disguise the price increase, or orange juice, for example.
Oh, yeah.
I used to get a half a gallon of orange juice, and now it's slimmed down for a little bit more, but essentially it's risen more than you think, and it's profiteering.
Oh, it's absolutely, and it's incredible. It's such a and Richard Wolff does such a good job. If you listen to him talk about inflation, he does a really good job of explaining these things. But
the rhetoric on inflation is overinflated.
Absolutely, and it's real simple. Like, the Fed, they loan money to their rich buddies who hoard it, or they use it to buy stocks. They use it for stock buybacks. That's a big thing. So that none of this money goes to producing anything. No. So you end up with more money in the economy, theoretically in the economy, that's not being used. It's not changing hands. It's not creating anything with the same amount. So yes, when you dump money into the economy and you're not producing more, yeah, that's going to create inflation. But that money isn't getting dumped on. That isn't the pennies they might throw us that's causing this inflation. It's the handouts they're giving to their rich buddies who are just sitting on it.
Yeah.
I mean,
you mean the ones that can afford to joyride in space?
The ones that can
Those
afford
kind
to.
of guys,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Well, I'll joyride downtown if I can get my stuff out of the snow.
Right. I mean, and the space exploration too. I mean, that's such because and I'm interested in space travel. I it's fascinating. But what it's becoming is just this idea that these CEOs seem to have. That's like, oh well, once we ruin this place, we can just leave.
Yeah, so we don't have to do anything about here. Let's figure out how we can colonize Mars.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can solve our problems by going elsewhere. And now this is exactly what companies do anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So think of all the Superfund sites that are still not necessarily even cleaned up. It's like that the EPA was rendered toothless.
Oh yeah.
During the Trump administration, and then didn't necessarily do everything it should have before, because all those decisions can be influenced by political contributions.
Oh, absolutely.
And you get pressure from the industry not to enforce what is clearly in the interest of the people, and you get environmental pollution, environmental racism. Not in my neighborhood. Don't put it in my neighborhood. Put it over there. And that's essentially what happened that set off the Standing Rock situation. The folks in Bismarck said, oh no, it'll endanger our water. So they sent it down to just off the edge of the Standing Rock Sioux reservation, but through treaty territory that they had hunting and fishing rights on. So they were ready to enforce their treaties from the 1870s. One of the people I camped with there was a woman who lives at Wounded Knee. That anniversary of the massacre was just on the 29th of December. And that's the genocide that we won't admit to. This whole thing about, we've got to educate our children to be proud of America, which means we can't talk about any of the bad things. And if you can't talk about the bad things, you cannot make any progress.
No, I mean, absolutely not. But, they're not... Yeah, they don't want to make progress. They don't want to teach history, because history makes it pretty clear. The history of humanity, the history of America is the history of class struggle. And it is, it's clear when we look at, when you actually start digging beyond even a few layers beyond the basic overview we're taught in school about the American Revolution, it becomes pretty clear that what the founders wanted to do was preserve slavery. They wanted to preserve the institution of slavery, and that was a huge part of why we went to war with Britain. And they wanted to be able to push west. They wanted to be able to engage in that genocide, of the Native Americans. And once you start peeling back those layers, from there, it doesn't get better. And I'm not saying, don't be proud to be an American, but at the same time, what does that mean to you to be an American? Because to me, that means, democracy. If we talk about democracy, and that's a huge thing that's been talked about so much recently, because we want to look at these other places throughout the world and say, oh, they're a threat to democracy, and, Mike, what is democracy to us? Because where's the economic democracy? Where's the democracy in our lives? Where's the actual power of the people? Again, besides checking a box. Yeah. And no matter who wins, we lose, right? The people who founded this country, right, they never wanted it to be a democracy where everybody had a voice. They really didn't, When you look at we hold these truths to be self-evident. The language of the Declaration of Independence. It is good language. It's something that we should all be able to hold on to, but and draw meaning from. That should inspire all of us. But the truth is that we might be kidding ourselves if we thought they were being honest when they wrote.
Well, it's like a mission statement, and we are not fulfilling our mission.
No. Absolutely.
And we've been working on fulfilling our mission, but there's a lot of inertia in this, and as generations proceed, some of the people that don't get it will naturally be dying off. But they are the ones in control of the education system, and we don't want things to change, so we've got to make sure that everything looks like it's just the way it should be.
Oh, absolutely.
Change history. Don't admit things. And we can look at Turkey, who made it against the law to speak of the Armenian genocide, and we look at those things, and we look at Hitler, and we don't look at ourselves. The only way you're going to be a moral country is if you stop pointing at all the bad people and look in the mirror. Oh, that's where.
Absolutely, and and I have to be careful with the way I say this, because I don't want to. In no way do I want to make light. Obviously, Hitler was, one of the worst people to ever live. The Holocaust was an awful travesty that happened, In no way am I making
But
light of that.
he didn't get there by himself.
He didn't get there by himself.
He had lots of help.
And the reason that the Western world was so horrified by what he did was because he was doing it to people that looked like them.
Ah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
These were things that had been done to, to people of color. This was nothing new. But when you do it to someone that looks like me, now I'm worried. And again, I'm not making light of anything that happened. It's awful when it happens to anyone. Yeah. But what it's not, unfortunately, is unique. And I think that's something that doesn't get thought about enough.
So, what can the Panther Party do in the Moscow Pullman area and in Idaho? Why do we need the Panther Party?
Well, so like I talked about, we do have these issues with the police here. The Pullman PD, I'm sure,
And this is a story that can probably be replicated in just about any region you want to look at. It's not necessarily
No, absolutely.
Here, this is just a picture of what goes on in other places.
Absolutely.
This happens to be the one we are in.
Absolutely. But more than anything, what I want people to take away is that we need organizations where we need people to be organized. We need we need to start learning to be communities again, to work as communities, and we need to be able to defend those communities. And that is important, and it's something that I think that we on the left, having an organized mechanism for having communities that are safe and secure, and I don't just mean physical security, obviously. Yeah. I mean food security, I mean housing security, that we have mechanisms for teaching the truth. A big thing that the Black Panthers always were about was about education, food programs. All of these things need to get set up now. We need to go organize and start setting these things up now because, like I was alluding to, in the next 5, 10, 20 years, things are going to keep getting worse. This society is not working. American capitalism is not working, and it has reached breaking points. It's reached a few different breaking points. The supply chain shortages, the supply chain issues, those aren't going away. Issues of police brutality, issues of right-wing violence, issues abroad that come home. So once again, I'm talking about, we're running into where there's friction between the United States and other countries, and that, once again, is going to have economic impacts here. And in many cases, when we take a global outlook, maybe it's a good thing that these other countries are gaining their independence from us. But that is still going to have an economic impact here. And then on top of that, there are the environmental issues that are going to, again, keep getting worse. And what we need to have this set up so that we can take care of each other without relying on the government to do it, because this government has no interest in taking care of us. It only cares about us for our labor. And if you're not a productive laborer, then they are not interested in your well-being. And if we don't get organized now, if we wait until it's too late, it'll be too late. If we wait until we say, if we wait to build this organization of like, we need these, again, organized parties that can take care of our communities, that can defend our communities, that can give people someone else to call other than the cops than when they're in trouble. A lot of these incidences don't happen if someone it's not just about like chasing off the cops. It's about giving people someone else to call to say, hey, we can help you. We need to learn to be communities again. We need to learn as people that we are social animals again. We have this idea of rugged individualism that is just bred into us because it separates us from each other. Mm-hmm. And it makes it so that
everybody is a Daniel Boone or a Davy Crockett.
Exactly. Yeah, these mythological ideas of people. And no one has ever, just to be clear, ever achieved anything great without standing on the shoulders of others. It's never happened. It can't happen. If we wait, because all sorts of disasters are coming, like I was saying, things are going to keep getting worse. And if we wait until society is completely broken down to say, okay, now we need to start organizing a new one, it's going to be too late, right? Because the wolves will be at the gate.
Well, in that film, Don't Look Up, all of this stuff that we're talking about is going on in that society, and it's like, oh, the comet has just solved all those problems.
Sounds about right. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's difficult times, and I'm optimistic for the future. I genuinely, I think that if we do what we need to do in the next few years, we can find a way to out of this crisis. I mean, this is what always happens when a system stops working. There are crises, and they lead to either, the formation of the restructuring of society for the betterment of all, or the mutual ruin of all. And if we want it to be that first one, we need to be organized now. We need everyone to start feeling invested in their community. We need to have structures. Because, again, when we talk about the Occupy movement, when we talk about the protests that happened in the summer of 2020, these are people seeing that things are going wrong. And they get angry. You see the George Floyd video, you can't help but get angry. But being angry isn't enough. Spontaneity has its limits. And if we try to respond spontaneously to these issues when they arise without that preparation and organization, it's ineffective.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that what happened in the summer of 2020 happened. But I'm glad the people rose up. But what did we get out of it? We got a few convictions. That didn't change the system. That didn't stop people from getting killed by the cops.
Well, the Stop the Steal movement got a few convictions too.
No, exactly. I mean, and that's the other aspect of it, is that the fascist right is organizing. And that's the other reason that we need an organized Panther movement, is because the fascist right is organizing. They are building.
They're strategizing. They're working subtly to gain influence. And you look at, all this stuff about critical race theory is because they plan to get control of local school boards.
Absolutely. And that's something the left is terrible about. I think we need to do a much better job of organizing locally when it comes to things like school boards, city council meetings, because the right owns those. And we know, again, we've just saw some good convictions, but who walked?
Yeah.
Rittenhouse walked.
Yeah, well, and you got some good convictions of the people that assaulted the Capitol building, but that's only the people that were incited to do so by the people that were behind the whole thing.
Absolutely.
There was no profit for those folks of doing what they did, but they were told that they had, our country is gone if unless we can do this. We're patriots and we're trying to save the country. And at the same time, a whole other set of patriots inside the Capitol, the Capitol Police, they're trying to do their job and save the country. Meantime, the joker behind the whole thing is watching on his TV and not doing anything to stop it. So
no, absolutely.
And this is, wow.
Absolutely. I mean, they're organized. Their leaders nobody's going to go after them legally. I think I've been thinking a lot about the Rittenhouse trial because, again, when we see convictions in the Ahmaud Arbery case, when we see convictions, when we see Kim Potter convicted, and we see him walk, they're telling us don't be an activist. And what they're saying is, like, if you are out there protesting, if you are willing to fight, if you're willing to stand up for justice, there won't be any justice for you. We'll let them gun you down.
There's two words: Kent State. It's all Kent State now. I mean, if it isn't the authorities that will shoot, the armed right.
Absolutely. And, and I know that this is a controversial bit on the left, but this is why, the Panthers are here. This is why we're coming back, because frankly, and again, I know that not everybody is on board with this, but to my mind, the left needs to be armed, because the cops aren't going to protect us, and the fascists are coming. And I know that that's a hard one, because, us on the left, we're compassionate people. We don't like the idea of violence. I know that I've talked to you, and you've said that you don't consider yourself a pacifist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Conscientious objector to war and all forms of violence.
But to my mind, we'll get killed if we're not ready to defend ourselves. And I'm not advocating anybody go looking for trouble. In any case, don't start trouble. Don't go looking for it. But we need an organized defense for when the fascists come knocking, because the cops aren't going to be there for us. Man, that's my opinion.
Okay, and let's see. Let's look into the future. What sort of scenario do you see taking place in the next couple of years on the national political level? What direction do you see it going?
Well, so I see a few different things. What I see, I think it's important that we pay attention to what's going on internationally, to look at what's going to happen on the national level, because China is going to be a huge thing. The growing conflict with China is going to be a huge thing.
Why does it have to be a conflict? Why does it have to be framed as a conflict? I mean, here.
No, absolutely. Yeah. There's no reason for it, but it has to be, because, and I know there's a great deal of controversy about China. I don't want to necessarily get too into that, but they say they're socialist, and a growing power that says it's socialist is going to set off all sorts of warning bells in Washington, and just they don't want to give up their hegemony.
You see, all of these supposed framing things as conflicts means that when you send your defense budget in, which profits all of the arms manufacturers and all of the folks that that are basically being enriched or supported by the war machine and the war readiness, they get more money. In fact, they got more money than they asked for this year.
They did, which is crazy.
Absolutely.
And we argue about pennies to help people that are starving.
But fear sells.
Yeah, fear does. Oh, absolutely, and that's something they do well on the right, is they weaponize people's fear. Nationally, what's going to happen in the next few years is, again, I see a lot. I see building towards the potential of a power conflict with China. I see. I think in 2022, 2024, things are not looking good for Democrats, because I think at this point, neoliberalism has failed, and what I mean by that is that sort of like moderate, milquetoast sort of democratic position that we've seen kind of starting with Clinton, where it's a lot of rhetoric, but they're not actually helping the people. It's not really progressive, and when they have power, they do very little with it.
None of them are behaving like Lyndon Johnson.
No.
He did some amazing things, and actually that Richard Milhouse Nixon started the EPA and got us at least talking and trading with China.
Absolutely.
So, is there anybody out there that you see on the political scene that might take us in a? Well, there's Bernie. Bernie would have been. His influence is still there. But he was thwarted by the socialist thing, and now there's even people in town here that are saying that mask mandates for communism.
I mean, that's incredible, and it's, and I need to be careful when I say this, because I don't want to.
Sure.
The position of the party is that it is open to, we don't have a specific, it's not specifically, it's not a Marxist party. I know for a great deal, I know Huey was a Marxist, he was an intercommunalist, but the Washington Black Panther and Washington White Panther parties aren't explicitly, communist or socialist. We have anarchists in there, we have liberals, we have some Marxists. Personally, I am a Marxist.
Groucho or Zeppo? The sixth Marx brother, Carl. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yes, yeah. He was also pretty funny sometimes, though. So what I see personally when I look at it, what I see is that anyone who gets elected in this system is going to be a bourgeois actor. They're going to be, I mean, when we talk about, Bernie Sanders, the people that talk about communism and socialism, and who say mask mandates or Marxism, they don't know what these words mean, right? No. They don't understand. Like I've had discussions with people where they're like, "Oh, that's communism," and I'm like, "What's communism mean?" He said, "It means you have no rights." No, it doesn't. It means public ownership of the means of production. But okay, even the far left that we have here, the far left, are not socialists, right? They're social democrats, and we talk, it's the Icelandic model that we see. It's we see AOC and she's talking about. She says, "Oh, when we want socialism, we're not like China, not like Cuba, like Denmark," and that's pretty much the extreme far left that we have here. The extreme far left in quotes, right? And the thing is that this isn't socialism, and it's, to my mind, there are issues even with this far left situation, because what you're going to see from that, from the Bernie camp, from the squad, first off, is the greenwashing. And what I mean by that, when we talk about things like the Green New Deal, the lithium mining that goes into that, there's the idea that we just kind of like come up with new, better technology, and
technology always has side effects, just like any medicine.
Absolutely. And it's not about an economic restructuring that prioritizes the world, that prioritizes the environment. It's not like recognizing this system isn't working for the environment. It's, a lot of the time what it's doing is it's taking, it's that get it off my lawn that you were talking about, not in my neighborhood. We're taking this and we're saying, okay, well, instead of having, all this smoke and stuff here, well, let's find a way that we can go and, extract minerals from some, African or South American country to build our green technology. You know what I mean? Governor Inslee, I went down to visit the Kalispel tribe a few years back in eastern Washington by Newport. Yeah. And, they talked about how in order to build these batteries for solar panels, build solar panels and build batteries for hybrid cars, electric cars. They wanted to build this smelter in Newport, and the tribe and their scientists, they ran all the numbers, and they were like, well, this is going to blow all this smoke. This is going to do all this damage to our ecosystem, and to our land here. On the reservation, and Governor Inslee, the champion of climate, of environmental issues, since forever, he came down and he said, "Look, y'all just need to take one for the team on this one."
Yeah, and that's always,
when we talk about these sort of progressive ideas, the issue is that a lot of them fail to engage systemically, I guess is what I'm saying. It's maybe it's tax the rich, right? Tax the rich. But what we're talking about there is we're going to take the money, your money, right? If because all of that wealth comes from the exploitation of labor, at home and abroad. It's stolen from the workers. It's stolen from, the countries that we colonize, that it comes from imperialism, and it comes from the exploitation of wage labor. And even the idea that, tax the rich. Well, we're going to take these profits from these, ill ventures and give some of them back. but it never goes to like, let's stop doing these things.
Well, if you look at the union movement, and then the vilification of the union movement, trying to connect it to the mafia, Jimmy Hoffa, and that whole thing, and the suppression
Oh,
of the labor movement. I mean, I read something recently where now they're using technology to like workplace technology and stuff to keep an eye on what people are thinking and saying, so they can do their union busting before the people even know what hit them. It's a tactic to keep the worker either afraid for their job, or you gave him something, nothing of any real substance, but you gave him something.
Absolutely.
You smiled as you exploited them.
Absolutely. And I've been thinking about the union movement a lot lately because it has been gaining ground, and it's really something that I would like to see the Panther Party working with. We are working on that. We're working on building those connections, but, and it makes me think because, again, I think because I'm from here, I grew up in Moscow and this rural area, and I think about, a lot of, again, rural white people like me, and the way that, it is a very conservative community. It's a community that doesn't really support these sort of, left-wing movements in large part. And it's kind of hard for me to get my head around. I mean, I understand there's the propaganda and the miseducation that goes into it, but, every day when I went to high school, I'd hear some redneck kid talking about how the cops had been messing with him. Since when do rednecks like cops, man? Since when did they not believe in, taking your Second Amendment right and standing up to the police that are messing with you? That's what it's about, right? Protect yourself from tyranny. Any self-respecting redneck should be on board with that. They should be on board for the, the labor movement. That's, to my understanding, that's where the term redneck comes from. It was red bandanas worn by striking miners.
Oh, okay.
And, people think it, that's been, mystified. People talk about, it's the sun going up and down. My understanding is that union leaders told them to wear it. It was a way to create solidarity, a way to create unity. So, regardless of who you are, what race you are, we're all rednecks.
Now we have the MAGA hat.
Now we have the MAGA hat, right? My point is, even if it takes on a different form, even if it isn't as pronounced, the same people, that are brutalizing, people of color, are messing with you or robbing from you, or the ones that, want to tell you, what you can do. They want to, pull you over, give you a hard time about, the tail lights on your truck, want to take your guns away if that's something you care about. Again, the Panther movement, we are an armed party, we have armed members, and, we believe in these things that so many of these rural conservatives say they do. Rural, white working class folks say they do. And if they actually believe these things, if you're not full of it when you say that you're for these things, if you're not full of it when you say you believe in standing up to tyranny, again, when we talk about the police, these are people that are paid to mess with you and enforce these laws that were, written by a bunch of rich liberals that have never done a hard day's work in their life, and I don't mean, liberal can mean a few different things, but, so it seems to me that this is a place, there's no reason that rural white communities can't get on board with this, because it aligns with their stated values, a lot of them.
Well, if you look purely at the economics of rural communities, they're either they're dependent on agriculture or mining or logging or whatever, and some of that. The logging. I remember when the spotted owl became famous, and it was a bumper sticker. Oh, you'll have to wipe yourself with a spotted owl now because we couldn't make enough TP because we can't kill the old growth forests. I'll probably take that out.
No, I mean that's. Oh man. I mean, I definitely see your point, though. Your point is that basically, like, any sort of reform, there's the perspective that reform could hurt them economically.
Yeah. And we don't get beyond the economics. So those that say take one for the team aren't willing to take one for the team.
Absolutely. And you know, like
and the team is all of us when it comes down to it.
Oh yeah.
The team, and not just the humans.
No.
All of the living things, because we are dependent on all of them.
We absolutely are. You know, the issue is, and I understand not wanting to get past that. You know, it's hard to, if you're worried about when your next meal is coming from, it's hard to think about much else.
Yeah.
The thing is, once again, the issue, and it's the same issue that I was talking about earlier with politics, is the issue is that we're taught to think in such a small cage, where when we think about the economics, even if you still want to think about the economics of these situations, when you think about the economics of this situation, why are we still playing this game where, you know, a few people get to decide whether or not we get to eat? You know what I mean? Why are we still, you know, playing this game where we are allowing a few people who are wealthy to decide who we are? We talk about democracy and freedom, but, you know, at the end of the day, most of us that work go somewhere, you know, spend 40 hours a week somewhere where, you know, we're told what to do all the time and we have no control over that. You know what I mean? I mean, and again, people are going to argue like, oh, you can choose to work there. It's like, yeah, I can work there, or I can be homeless. Like, what are you know? But my point is, we don't have to exist. You know, if you're worried about your economic situation, we don't have to exist within this limited economic structure of U.S. capitalism that says that, you know, this is your job and that's everything that you are.
So there are alternative models which are viable in our society, such as co-ops. There's some farm co-ops. There's business co-ops. There's artist co-ops. Let's see, I read something about there was a coffee shop that got unionized, and then the owners put it up for sale. Any employees bought it.
Oh man.
Yeah, I've been self-employed since 1973, so you know that sort of thing is admirable.
Absolutely.
It can be scary, but and you'll work awfully hard, but you just have this terrible, brutal boss, and you can't quit because you're self-employed.
I mean, but there's the, I mean, and that's the sort of stuff that we need to get to. We need to create these communities that are economically dependent, you know, and what the sort of things you're talking about, these economic co-ops, that's a great way to get there. You know, we need to create systems where people don't have to engage with this nonsense in order to be taken care of. Because once we start, the more that we're able to become dependent from this system that is collapsing, and again, you know, you can like the United States in its system of American capitalism or not, but whether you like it or not, it is collapsing. And I don't see anything happening to change that. I don't see anyone who's going to come along and get into office and change that.
Actually, change has to come from us and not from those at the top. They get their own self-interests, and if we organize amongst ourselves, anything that any of us needs is right in the community around us.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't have to go to Walmart and buy that thing that you need. Somebody will loan you the special roofing hammer or whatever it is, you know. But instead of amassing stuff, the community has stuff, we make connections, and I can borrow Bob's chainsaw, and he can borrow my rowboat or whatever. It's like, and we're not worried about money. We're thinking about helping each other solve the problems that we have, and our problems really aren't money.
No.
Don't have enough money means you can't do things. No, you don't have enough connections to other people so we can work together. Now that there's a picture of socialism where a community functions not on the basis of who's rich and who's poor. It's like, who's the most generous and helpful person? That's the respected person.
Absolutely.
And when you are generous and helpful, you receive generosity and help in exchange. And if you're you don't need to keep accounts of it. It's just something that you observe. It happens.
Well, absolutely. And when we talk about the philosophy of Huey P. Newton, which was intercommunalism, that was his contribution to the tradition of Marxism. It was essentially, it's been described as radical good neighborliness. And it's the idea of...
Oh, that's just what I articulated. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I thought of it.
Would you like a cup of coffee?
I would love a cup of coffee. Thank you.
We'll do it.
It's essentially, again, we help each other out. We share. We create these systems of interdependence and internal support for our communities, where we don't have to engage.
There's a scientific name for that. It's called symbiosis.
Absolutely. And the more that we can do this, the more we don't have to engage. The more we don't have to get to engage in wage labor. The more we don't have to engage in the buying of the products of wage labor. The more we don't have to engage in, again, calling the cops, which leads to us giving up our community members to slave labor in the prison industrial complex. The more we don't have to engage in the poverty draft. And what we're doing with these things is we're taking resources back into our communities, and we're taking them out of the hands of the oppressors. We're taking them out of the hands of the people that are of the ruling class that's been screwing everyone over for a long time. And as we take that away, and as more communities start doing this and rising up, that grip that they have on us starts to weaken. And not just the grip here, but the grip in other places as well around the world.
You're familiar with what's called vagrancy laws?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. There's this one song that I sing. If you go down on Deep Ellum, which is a bad section of Dallas. Yeah, when you go down on Deep Ellum, you better have your $15, boy, when the policeman comes. You had to have $15, otherwise you were considered a vagrant and would be sent to the workhouse or sent to the county farm to work.
Jesus.
So unless you could prove that you had money, then you could be enslaved. And this happened throughout the South.
I mean, and that's just it, as people, as certain institutions like the institution of slavery as people recognize that's unacceptable, as it's abolished, or at least chattel slavery, the system has to get a little bit sneakier. It has to come up with excuses for
the 14th Amendment said, slavery is prohibited except in case of somebody that's been
absolutely
imprisoned. Then that's okay. And then it used to be the state of Washington Constitution prohibited the farming out of slave labor, prison labor, to private business. They changed the Constitution a couple of years ago. In recent times, they changed to allow that. Now the prison industry thing. The theory being, these people that have done wrong should be responsible to pay for their. Not only will they pay for their crimes with time, they'll be enslaved while they do it to help pay the expenses. Of course, when you add the private prisons into the thing, basically, where is the incentive to let anybody out on parole?
There isn't one.
There isn't. Oh, well, this person is worth $150 a day to us or something, and as many days. And had a stepson from Texas who got, let's see, he got 5 years for a DUI, and I forget how many, how many he actually served, but he was in this pre-release center in Texas. It was a private prison thing, and he was there for everything but 2 weeks of his sentence.
That's crazy.
That was crazy, and he didn't get into trouble.
I mean, sort of related, sort of not, but I mean, Steven Donziger, if you look at that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That dude just did a bunch of time. He's still confined because he won a court case against Big Oil. And there was no jury for that ever. He never saw a jury. He refused to break attorney-client privilege. And the judge sent him straight to jail. I mean...
Anyway, the Panther Party, Moscow, Pullman, in Washington, Idaho, probably everywhere, to move us from the consciousness of division to the idea that we can cooperate with all sorts of people if we have common purpose. And the common purpose doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, there's a war, we gotta all go and we gotta...
No.
Oh, no. Your patriotism can be participating in community and being a helpful person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway, that's my nonsense and I'm sticking to it.
No, I absolutely, that's what it is.
Yeah.
We need to pull together right now because, like I said, the system's reaching a breaking point,
yeah.
and we need to be ready to take care of ourselves because it's not going to take care of us.
Well, there's another thing, of concern there is the political divide can make it really hard for us to cooperate.
It really can, and it's strange to me because so many of these, so many of these issues are made up. People that are arguing about, the political divide isn't over policy.
It's made up to keep us powerless.
Absolutely. It's, but there are things that if we actually look at it, how many, American citizens, when you look outside of just the halls of power, who actually wants war? No one. Donald Trump got elected. A big part of why he won the primaries is because he was the Republican candidate saying, I'm going to stop the wars. Left and right, nobody wants any more wars. And the establishments that are in power right now, Democrats and Republicans, as long as we let them have all the power, they're going to keep pushing us into wars. Even though that's not what anyone wants. These divisions between us, again, these are social divisions that they come up with. Racial divisions, culture war nonsense, right? Critical race theory, like you were talking about. That's meant to divide us so that we don't focus on what really matters, which is the material conditions of us, the people. Am I fed? Is my neighbor fed? Do we have places to stay? Right? Is everyone actually taken care of? Is everybody doing okay? And if not, why? Because this is the wealthiest country ever to exist, right? And we can see, whatever other issues there might be, people aren't starving in Cuba like they are here.
True. They have better medical care here, too. I'm going to pause.